Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to another one of our conversations at home. My name is Liz, and I'm really excited to be joined today by Emmy and Critics' Choice Award-winning television host Tom Bergeron. You know him from his hosting duties on America's Funniest Home Videos and Dancing with the Stars, as well as his recent appearance as the Taco on The Masked Singer. Tom, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure, Liz, and I'm glad you got the memo that we should wear our glasses so we look more intelligent.
I think so. It's perfect.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, absolutely.
I wanted to take a second before we start to remind everyone that the SAG-AFTRA Foundation is currently raising money for our COVID-19 fund to help SAG-AFTRA members being affected by the closed productions and who are currently out of work. If you need help, ask, and if you can help, please give. More information can be found on the info box below this video. Now, the COVID-19 Fund is actually how we got connected to Tom here, who's been a fantastic supporter, raising money and creating one-of-a-kind videos on Cameo. First of all, thank you so much for your efforts. How did you first hear about our COVID-19 Fund, and what made you decide that you wanted to get involved via Cameo?
Well, being housebound as so many of us are, and feeling sort of creatively itchy, I was looking for a way to do something that was enjoyable for me, but also would provide financial assistance to a charity that I had a particular fondness for. So I just went on the SAG-AFTRA website, really, and knowing that we, meaning all of us actors, broadcasters, etc., right now we're at 100% unemployment because everything's been shut down. And I just thought the SAG-AFTRA Foundation COVID-19 Fund was the perfect place for me to raise money. And Cameo had reached out to me in the past about being part of their program, and it never, no disrespect to them, but it never really appealed to me that much unless I could find a charity that that was, the money was earmarked towards. And this seemed to be the perfect time and the perfect vehicle to do it. So I've been having fun every morning between around 10 and noon. I check the Cameo app, see how many requests came in, and then knock them off. And then when they pay me, I pay SAG-AFTRA Foundation.
Well, thank you again. For anyone who hasn't checked out their videos, they're fantastic. We'll put a link below this video as well to Tom's Cameo feed, so you can go on and have him send you a personal message or what he takes different requests. Your Marlon Brando recently has gained a ton of attention.
And those
what gave you the idea for that?
Well, it was that was the request, and that's the fun thing about these little videos. Somebody asked me to do part of a monologue from Waiting for Godot. And then this other request came in asking me to do Marlon Brando's version of Luck Be a Lady Tonight. Now, you might not know that back in, I think it was 55, Brando appeared in a film of Guys and Dolls, but I thought it would be more interesting to do it as his Godfather character. So, so I kind of offered a little spin, and the person who made the request seemed pretty pleased with that, so I was happy.
Well, it's so funny, and if you're not watching these videos, you are completely missing out. How are you personally handling your quarantine?
Well, I'm a creature of habit and a Taurus, and so I need routine. For someone like myself who loves ad-libbing on live television, everything else around my life is fairly structured. I kid with friends that even in the best of times, I go from the gym to Starbucks, to the studio, to home, lather, rinse, repeat, and so once I said, okay, this is serious, we have to really distance ourselves, we have to spend more time at home in order to flatten this curve, etc. Then it was a matter of, what am I going to do to not go stir crazy? Those to benefit SAG-AFTRA Foundation are certainly part of it. I've cracked open my Rosetta Stone app again, so I'm trying to see if I can rekindle my interest in learning French. Every so often, my wife and I will take a little medicinal drive. Before we started this interview, I was telling you that I was just finishing off an iced coffee. That's the Starbucks drive-through is a lifesaver. So yeah.
Well, God bless. You've had an incredibly successful career as a broadcaster and television host. How did you originally get started in broadcasting?
When I was in high school, there was a teacher of English and public speaking at the high school in my hometown of Haverhill, Massachusetts, and he worked part-time at the local radio station. So I decided to get in his good graces, first get in his class and then get in his good graces. And as it turned out, my Machiavellian scheme worked out perfectly. He and I became dear friends. He introduced me to the station manager at the hometown station. So while in high school, I was learning how to be a broadcaster, really. And from that job, I did theater, I did radio, I worked in radio in New Hampshire, and that led some Boston TV people to get in touch with me to audition for some television stuff. Yada, 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 here we are.
So you started more on the radio side and
Definitely.
you eventually made the leap to on-camera.
Yeah.
When was that transition and what was the biggest challenge when switching mediums?
Well, that's a really good question. The transition happened in steps. I was, back in the days when I was doing radio in my hometown, I was doing a morning radio show after I graduated from high school. And I was also part of a theater company. So, and we were mimes. So I know the people who annoy you in public parks and things like that.
Perfect.
So a friend of mine said it was interesting because when we hear you, we can't see you on radio, and when we see you, we can't hear you as a mime. So I've always been interested in hyphenating my career as much as possible, doing a little acting, doing broadcasting. Broadcasting really paid the bills more than anything. But the transition, the shaving and dressing better is the major transition from radio to television. And also finding the way to establish that same intimacy. When you're alone in a room with a microphone, or it's fairly easy. When suddenly there's a camera there, and looking at Dancing with the Stars, for example, 700 people in the audience and all the stuff that's going on, establishing that intimacy with that camera, the lens, is crucial. So what I've told students over the years is, even when you're in the midst of hustle and bustle, that camera lens is your conduit to one person. And that's who you're talking to. There have been times friends of mine have been in the dancing audience, and we'll cut to a commercial and they'll say, "We can't hear you because all of the din in the ballroom, we can't hear you." And I said, "Well, I'm not talking to you." I'm talking to them, and if you hear me, fine. But that intimacy is what you're really going for, I think. So that was finding that connection in a different medium was the key for me.
How do you prepare differently when you're hosting a show in front of a live audience?
No, I don't honestly prepare that much differently. I prefer it to a tape show. In many ways, America's Funniest Videos, which I loved doing for the 15 years I did it, was harder to do than Dancing with the Stars because of the requirements of that particular format. For example, if a video played in the studio and the audience there didn't respond to it, I really shouldn't refer back to it because it might be edited out of the final cut. So I had to be a little more generic because of that, because of the editing peculiarities of it. Whereas on dancing, it's live. I mean, it's there, no second take. You know when you're starting, you know when you finish, you know when you can hit the bar. So that's actually easier for me because it focuses my attention more.
Taking it back a little bit, I want to talk about the transition from People Are Talking, which was on the local Boston
network,
yeah, to FX's Breakfast Time. Yeah. How did that transition work, and what were the challenges and freedoms that you were allowed to have when you were on your first national show? That
it's interesting. I look at it now. In hindsight, it makes sense. My career tends to look like a hostage note, sort of all cut up in different pieces and stitched together. But People Are Talking, which was a daily live talk show in Boston on what was then the NBC affiliate. And the Westinghouse stations had them. Oprah did the one in Baltimore, for happened to her. But anyway, that was like going to school every day, because it was a live show every day for an hour, and it was a different topic. And it would range from serious stuff to the silly stories to issues surrounding the Boston, New England market. So that got my live muscles really well honed, I think. And at that time, I also did some radio in Boston, which helped kind of keep those juices flowing as well. When the opportunity came along to do the FX show back when FX launched in '94, this was a morning show inspired by the Big Breakfast in England. And I remember going to that audition, and I wasn't interested. They were paying for my day in New York, FX, so I figured I'd visit some friends and I'll do the audition. I don't really want to take the job or anything. Well, then I met Peter Feynman, the producer of all these live shows, and I was hooked. I loved his love of live television and improv absolutely connected with mine. And I suddenly saw that there's a real opportunity here to almost do televised radio in a 6,500 square foot loft apartment made for television in the Flatiron district of New York. So I got back to Boston and I said to my wife, when they finally offered me the job, I said, I think if we don't do this, it's going to be like Chinese water torture, drip, drip, regret, drip, regret, drip, And our attitude was, we have good relationships here in Boston. If it doesn't work out, it's not like we burned any bridges. We can probably skulk back and look for work. But it turned out to be, to this date, despite shows that have had much bigger audiences, the most fun I've ever had in television. It just was this magical, almost 2-year period on FX and happily there are a lot of YouTube videos where you can see some compilations of what we did. But Breakfast Time was really the experience of the format with the incredible chemistry amongst all of us on camera and behind the camera was unique in my experience in my career.
You've been a part of some incredibly legendary shows. I want to touch upon Hollywood Squares, which you were on from 1988 to 2004. In that time, you filmed an incredible 1,047 episodes, which is what,
oh my God, I didn't even know that. I'm exhausted hearing that.
200 a year. How were you even able to do that many? What did the process look like for that show?
I remember years ago, Pat Sajak was on my Boston talk show. And I had no aspirations to host a game show at that point. I didn't even know if I'd get out of, regional television. But I remember him saying, Tom, hosting a game show is the best job in the world. You show up in your jeans and a t-shirt, and there's a suit hanging up in your dressing room. You put it on, you tape a show, you go back to your dressing room, there's another suit. You put that on, and sure enough, the schedule for Hollywood Squares was amazing. I would, because we live on both coasts, so I would fly in from New York, and there'd be a rental car waiting for me, and that's on a Friday, and on Saturday I'd get to the studio about 10 in the morning. Whoopi would say hi, I'd say we'd mingle. We'd tape 3 shows in the morning. To tape a half-hour show, we did it almost as if it was live. We probably took 40 minutes. Get one show done, go in my dressing room, just like Sajak said, there's another suit. So by 4:30 at the latest in the afternoon, we would have put 5 shows in the can. After the first 3, we'd break for lunch. I remember one week, Venus and Serena Williams were on Hollywood Squares, and we had this video game called Hydro Thunder next to where we had lunch. And I beat Venus and then Serena Williams back to back in Hydro Thunder. And then one of them said, "You want to try us at tennis?" I went, "No, I'm good. I'm good." No moss.
Trophy for that.
Yeah.
Incredible. So you hosted America's Funniest Home Videos and now Dancing with the Stars for 15 years each.
Yeah.
What are the highlights and challenges of working on a show for that long?
I think keeping that sense of freshness. And that was, to be honest, that was one of the reasons that I decided, as we were coming up to the 25th anniversary of AFV, that I felt that I had done what I could do with the format. So the last contract I signed with them was a 2-year deal, which would take us to the 25th season, at which point I knew I wanted to pass the piñata stick to someone else. And happily, Alfonso Ribeiro was the perfect person to take on the show. But keeping it fresh is important. I think with the dancing show, it's a little easier because it's a different cast every season. And particularly over the past couple of years, we're only doing one a year. We're still waiting to hear if we're picked up for the fall. And beyond that, but beyond that, even if we are, Bruno and I, one of the judges, he and I were texting each other recently. Can you imagine a world in which 700 people and 24 sweaty dancers are all mingling together? It's hard, isn't it? So even if we're picked up, will we be able to be on the air in September and give you enough of a semblance of the show you've come to know? So, but to get back to your original question, it makes it easier to keep it fresh because of the different personalities coming in.
On Dancing with the Stars, you're able to build such a rapport with the judges and contestants. How much of that is scripted and how much of it is just off the cuff?
Yeah, the rapport, not scripted at all. The only parts of that show for me that are scripted are when I'm tossing to a commercial. If I'm welcoming you back, the director might want to take particular shots. Everything else is ad-libbed. Everything about my reaction with the couples and the judges, Aaron and I, that's all just off the cuff, which is what I love. And going back to the second season of the show back in 2006, that's when I went to the producers at the time and I said, there's too much that's scripted here, and I would prefer to just have enough rope to hang myself. and I'm forever grateful that they took the risk and said, all right, go for it and see what happens.
And here you are.
And here I are, talking real good like.
How do you balance the numerous responsibilities of hosting a show, such as presenting that upbeat and energetic atmosphere, while keeping the show moving forward and on schedule?
Yeah, well, one of the nice things about it is whether I'm good or bad at that, it's going to end at the same time. I mean, there's, it's going off the air at basically 10:01 Eastern time. But it's almost like conducting an orchestra. You have a sense of the rhythm of it. Like, for example, I might have an ad lib come to me that I think could be really funny, but it's, someone else might have just scored, like Bruno may have just scored, and we need to get back to to focus on the couple. So a lot of those are judgment calls. There have been occasions where I've thought I had a really funny idea. I said it, and I wished I hadn't. But in 15 years, I can count those in pretty much one hand, so that's good.
Well,
I have a lousy memory though, so that'd be part of it. But so it is like that. It's like music. How do we bring the horns in here? The string section. All right, let's quiet it. Take a beat. Okay, now I remember one time Derek and I forget who his partner was, but they had done just this really sexy samba. And they came over to me, and Carrie Ann said, "Oh, I hope the kids are in bed." And I said, because it just came to me, I said, "Well, I know a lot of the adults are now." But it was a wonderful explosion of laughter in the audience. So those are wonderfully gratifying, but also important to know when not to say those things, when to hold back, and if there's an emotional moment going, to let it breathe, that type of thing.
You've spoken previously about how you've used transcendental meditation as a tool to feel prepared for anything that live TV throws at you. Can you explain a little more about how it plays a role in your process?
Sure. I've been doing TM meditation for, we're pushing 40 years now. And I'm only 28, which is, I just prematurely gray like Anderson Cooper. I know. But meditation was always important to me in terms of just being in the present moment of my life, to be here now, which, for so many of us, it's difficult. We're obsessing about something we have to do later, or how we handled something that happened before, and we tend not to be in the now of our life. And the meditation, and by the way, I do TM, but you can do breath meditation or a still point on the wall, whatever. It's a mental muscle you're building. And the repetition of whether you're using a mantra or a word or your breath all achieves the same thing. And that is just an ability to assess stress as it comes in. And how much of this do I really need to deal with? How much of this can I let roll off my back? It all helps you be, as an old theater teacher of mine said, on the deck. Your feet are on the deck. And on a live show, of course, taking in all of the sensory input that's going on around you, deciding what to react to. It helps to be present. It helps not to be thinking about where I'm going to dinner later or whatever. So that's been crucial. And I had issues with, when I was younger, with my temper, which the meditation helped.
That's incredibly insightful. I think a lot of our viewers and SAG-AFTRA members and other broadcasters will be able to listen to that and use it as possibly something.
Well, yeah, I think from an acting standpoint too, I was watching a little bit of a master class that Helen Mirren gives, and I understood completely what she was saying. When all the hustle and bustle is going on around you, they're fixing your makeup, they're getting the lighting ready. You have to find that still point where the character lives, where this doesn't exist. So all of this is going on, but you have to find, and I do that on the show on dancing, that connection with the camera. There can be all kinds of nonsense going on, sets being moved, everything, people screaming and yelling. You got to find that still point where either your hosting mojo is, or your character is. I think that's important. We have to be able to call on that whenever it's required.
Well, you recently appeared on The Masked Singer. What made you want to do that show, and how is it different from anything you've done in the past?
How is it different singing Sinatra dressed as a taco? I think that kind of answers itself. Here's how it happened. I was at a friend's house. All right, I'm going to do some Hollywood name dropping. All right, give you the whole story. Watching Monday Night Football at William Shatner's house with a group of people, and my cell phone starts vibrating, and I look, and it is a friend of mine who used to executive produce Dancing with the Stars, and now executive produces Masked Singer. Izzy Pick Ibarra is her name. So I went into the bathroom at Shatner's house, and I texted Izzy. I said, I'm watching Monday Night Football. Can I call you back after? Because I had a sense what she might be calling me about. And here's why. I had recorded a song on a tribute album for Mr. Rogers. And it was just a lovely album. A producer from Nashville who won a Grammy for his previous Mr. Rogers compilation album, Dennis Scott, asked me to be part of it. Izzy heard about it. She said, oh, he can sing. Wonder, and they had one position open in Group B of the current season. So she said, would you be interested? When I finally called her back, I said, yeah, we're not doing dancing in the spring. And they do the show, which was lovely, on the same soundstage where we do Dancing with the Stars. So I know a lot of the crew and the production team, quite a few alums of dancing. And I just thought it would surprise people. It would, just I don't think people knew that I could sing. I don't have, I have a limited range, but I can sing within that range. And I thought, okay, give it a go. And Izzy said, we've got 2 costumes left, a taco and a jellyfish. And the jellyfish was disgusting. And the taco just was wonderfully bizarre. So I went with that.
Well, how did it feel to completely stump the judges, many of whom you know personally?
Yeah, that was amazing. I when I did the Sinatra song, Fly Me to the Moon, and they reacted the way they did, I could have left then. I just figured it's not going to get better than this. And Robin came closest when he guessed Bob Saget, because there had been VHS tapes in the clue package. And as it happened, 2 shows later, the person who I chose to be the friend giving information about me was in fact Bob Saget. And so it was great to stump them. Nicole had won Dancing with the Stars, I think going back season 8 or something. Robin had performed on the show a couple of times. Jenny and I have known each other for years. The only judge I didn't really know was Ken. But it was fun to stump them all, and to watch their reactions when I took off that big tomato head was wonderful.
How fun. What advice do you have for anyone looking to get into broadcasting or hosting in today's modern landscape?
Well, today's modern landscape, I think, provides a myriad of opportunities that weren't available, back in the late 1800s when I started. Because of things like this. I mean, you can become an influencer on social media and establish an audience and a comfort with the camera and a sense of your marketability, or what your particular brand is, if you will. So the old approaches of maybe local radio and local television and going up the ladder as I did, while they still exist, there are so many more opportunities that are only limited by how creative you are, I think, and how creatively you utilize things like Facebook and Instagram and all the other social medias.
What do you feel like you're still learning about your craft?
That's a really good question, because you don't want to get too jaded. And I think to the extent that some of the newer opportunities, like Jeffrey Katzenberg just launched Quibi, which is it's a tough time to launch a new service, certainly in the midst of this coronavirus. But that's bite-sized nuggets of shows, like 10 minutes for if you're commuting to work, you're not driving and watching, but if you're on the train or a bus or whatever, you got these shorter versions of programming. That's something that intrigues me. The idea of getting into more acting intrigues me, if I can overcome my innate laziness. So those are things that I think will keep me interested.
Do you think you'll go back to being a mime at any point?
Probably not. just to get. I like doing it when I meet like young fans of Dancing with the Stars, and they'll extend their hand to shake. Back in the days when we could shake hands, and I'd extend my hand and then just teach them how to do that, which is a totally useless skill, but it's pretty hypnotic to watch.
It looks really cool.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me, Tom, and thank you for your ongoing COVID-19 efforts. We greatly, greatly appreciate your support.
It is my pleasure, Liz, and I know we've heard the phrase so often that it's become a cliche, but it's a welcome one. We will get through this.
We absolutely will. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Take care, Liz. Bye-bye.